All right, so we're going to start the second lesson, but before we start, I want to bring up something I wasn't clear about in the first lesson. So I was saying that the jinkim makes you pronounce the letter by itself. So for example, if we had this and there's a jinkim on the E, it's telling you to say the by itself. So this would be eta. What I wasn't clear or I wasn't specific about is, remember I told you guys before, if you have something like this would be ya, but I didn't tell you what happens if you put a jinkum on it, because then that changes the pronunciation completely. So if you put a jinkum on either of the letters, it's telling you to say it by itself. So this would be said with whatever letters before it. So let's say, for example, there's an N before it. So now this is ni, ah. If there's no jinkim, so let me write it out clearly. This would be ni, ah. If there's no jinkim, this would be nya. Now, this isn't that common, but just so you see it, a very common example, which I put in the first homework, is this. So this would be I, but if you put a jinkim on either of them, it becomes ai. And it's common because we say it all the time in kinin kai. That's the word we're using. So that was just to clarify the jinkims when it's with a diphthong. The letters we'll talk about today, there's a lot, but most of them are very similar to English. So let me go back. Everything outside of this box is very similar, if not exactly the same as the English, but the one I boxed is the hardest letter. So if you realize the name of this lesson is Vowels 2 and Consonants 1, or Vowels 2 and English-like consonants, even this is the only vowel, but it's the most complex vowel, so I gave it its own spot in the lessons. So the name of that vowel is ha, even though the Greek name of that letter is epsilon. So if you hear someone say the letter epsilon, they're probably talking about this letter, but the name in Coptic was ha. Because in very, very, very old Coptic, which we don't use at all, it used to make an H sound. So that's ha, and it makes three sounds depending where it is. So it makes the E sound like party, the V sound like van, or the W sound like wet. But now when do you say it? So normally, most of the time, if I were to just ask you what sounds this letter make, you immediately think the E in party. It's normally E. If it's after an alpha or an A, it makes a V sound. Not if it's before it. So if you have like this word, we'll cover how it's pronounced in a second, but if this is before it, it doesn't have the V sound. It's only dependent on if it's after the alpha or A. But if it's between an O or U and another vowel, except this one, except O, it doesn't help to have the same name, then it makes a W sound. So for example, in this word, we know this sound makes an O sound. Based on this rule, we know this makes a W sound, and this one makes the A sound. So that's owa. If we put a iota here, we know that this is I, so now we have oy. And oy is the word for one. And here we have examples for each pronunciation rule. So we have mo, e, cis. So here makes an E sound. O, wo. So here makes a W sound because it's between an O and another vowel. And in here we have eva. Here it makes a V sound because it's after an E. It's not because of this A here. That's not affecting it. So this is Eva, which is clearly Eve. Now diphthong, if anyone remembers from last week, that means 2 letters, 1 sound. And the most common English example, well, there's multiple, but would be like SH making the sh sound or PH making the f sound, 2 letters making 1 sound. So this one is a diphthong that confuses a lot of people. So when you have O and you have ha, the 2 letters we covered, when they're next to each other alone, it makes an oo sound. Oo like do. Now that's different than here when it's between. And you'll see in the examples. I'll explain the examples. So it makes an oo sound. So here, this is nuti, which means God. This is noob, which means gold. And then this is u, which is a word for glory in Coptic. U. If there was this and then an alpha after it, like we said last time, then it would be owa. The only time it wouldn't work like that, and this is not rare, but you have to know grammar to know one. So u by itself is the Coptic word for Like if I want to say, let me just use a word here. If I want to say a god, I would say unuti. If the word here starts with a vowel, for example here, the word is actually ou, so ou is the word. And if I want to say a glory, which is actually what this word literally means, a glory, it would just be ou. If I wanted to say a saint, so saint, one of the words is agios. This would not be o agios because this u just means It's like its own word, but in Coptic you put it together. So this would be u agios. We'll cover all the other letters later, but just know here, if it's used as the word you ignore this rule. It doesn't become a W. So this letter needs a lot of practice. A lot of people have a hard time figuring out the differences. So it's normally an E. After an alpha or an E or A, it makes a V sound. And then between O and another vowel, it becomes a W. But if it's just an O with it together in this order, it makes an oo sound. If there's any questions, say it out loud or leave it in the chat. Or message me after watching the recording. Okay, after that is consonants. Now, most of these are going to be very simple, so we're probably going to finish this class extremely early. So this letter, zada, it looks like a Z. It is a Z. It's only found in Greek words. That'll help with later words. Not later words. Later letters we learn, but just know zeta or zada is only used with Greek words. So here it's a Z, always. Zoin. Agiazin. Ermakarizin. It's just a Z sound. Kaba or kappa looks like a K. It is a K. Kahi. Kaki. Kalos. Always a K sound. Mi. Looks like an M. It is an M. These 2 words, we actually covered all the letters, so you guys should be able to read it without me. But I'll just say it out loud. It's ma, me. And this one is kimi. That's the word for Egypt. Looks like an N. It is an N. Just know later, some letters that look like The English letter, it won't be, so just keep in mind the differences. Right now, most of them look the same that we covered. On. That's one of the many ways in Coptic you could say not. You just throw on at the end of the sentence. And then the two words we covered before, nuti, noob, God and gold. Next letter. This one is Sima. So it looks like a C. The way that most people get it, it looks like a C, and the first sound when you say C is the S sound. So it makes an S sound. Savol, agios, angelos. Always makes an S sound. In the 5th lesson, we'll learn an exception if it's in a Greek word, but 99%, it just makes an S sound. This one, dao or a tav, it just makes a t sound, just t. You'll see why I'm saying that when we cover the next letter. So this is telios, ⲓⲛ taxis, just makes a t sound. Now this next letter is something called a monogram. So a monogram is when you take two letters and you put it together. So the name of this letter is T, and that's the sound it makes. It's a T sound. So the way I like to remember it is this one makes a normal T sound, but if you have the iota on top of it, then you have T. So it just makes a T sound. It by itself, it means the. So you'll notice here if I have it in the front, it means the, but it could also mean like I. But we're not doing grammar, so I'm not going to go that much into it. So T Parthenos, the Virgin, Nuti, God, ⲓⲛ, I believe. I think this is the last letter. This is the last letter. So this letter, the old name is Wada, now we call it Vita. So Vita has two sounds. It could be what it looks like. It looks like a B. Most of the time it is a B. Well, not most of the time. Because it really depends on the word. But without exceptions, it would be a B sound. The exception is if the Vita is before a vowel, or if you want to say a vowel is after it, whichever way it makes sense. So if you have Vita and then you have a vowel after it, if that's the case, it becomes a V sound, unless it's in a name. So if you want, you can think of it like this. You can think of it normally and names. It'll make the B sound. And then before a vowel, it'll make a V sound in words. So here we have Elisabeth, because it's a name, so we pronounce it like a B. Ethoab, there's no vowel after it, so it's a B. Evol, after it is a vowel, so it became a V sound.